Hello, friends, and welcome back to Too Many Minis. My name's Ossie, and I'm joined by Simon.
Hello.
And we've been meaning to do this video for ages, right?
Yep.
Like, what profiles do we need in Middle-earth strategy battle game to kind of have everything covered?
Yeah, based on stuff that has appeared in the books or the films and is not yet in the game.
Because there's almost everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing like, none of these are like major glaring omissions, right? I don't think any of them are. Like, we've got all the big stuff.
Some are.
It's not like, oh, we forgot Saruman. It's,
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but there are a couple here.
All right. So we'll just run down roughly, I don't know how many it is, and then 5 that we don't need that are in the book. Because there aren't even that many more unnamed people, unless you go into the poems and songs.
We've got some from the poems and songs.
But there are a lot. That's the only place where there's like a lot of unnamed people, and generally all you know about them is their name.
Unnamed people. As in the groups or named people.
I meant named.
Right.
We'll probably cut that down.
We've got some named and unnamed profiles.
Yeah. Who are we going to start with?
We're going to start with Galleon.
Galleon is in the book. And the film?
I think he must be, but he's not really spotlit as much as I think he is in The Hobbit.
And he's Thranduil's butler.
He's Thranduil's butler who likes his wine.
Yeah. And he gets drunk and falls asleep.
Yeah.
And that happens in the film as well. And Bilbo thieves the keys to the trapdoor.
And then escapes in the barrels.
So you could have him, and in the film he's joined by 2 guys.
Elros and Ferrin.
They made them up for the film, but they do get credited in the scene. So you get a nice 3-pack of drunken elves. I don't know what purpose they'd serve in game.
No, I mean, I think he's quite an interesting character because he's part of how elves are sort of presented slightly differently in The Hobbit compared with the way that they are in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
They're a bit more reckless, and I think, in the traditional presentation of elves, you don't really think of them slacking off and getting drunk.
No. But it's part of the general sort of slightly sinister side of Thranduil's halls. It's not the perfect elves of Rivendell or Lorien. It's like, these guys are kind of a bit mean.
And they're really into partying.
Yeah, yeah. Likelihood of it happening, very low.
Very low. He's a great card in the LCG.
Does he have a drink-related effect?
No, he just he can bounce in and out. He sort of appears and then disappears. And he's good for a bit and then stops being good whilst he's in play. And you've got to remove him again and start him again. So I guess sober him up.
So he gets a second chance.
Burgil.
Except Burgil. I like Burgil. He's one of my favourite characters in the book because we get this little moment of there being a kid who is like the same height as Pippin.
Yeah.
And he shows us around Minas Tirith, and I always love Minas Tirith, and it's his tour of Minas Tirith that kind of gives you that as a reader. Yeah.
And I think usually you would just go, well, you're not going to have kids in a war game, but we've got kids now.
Yeah.
Several. So why not one of the ones that actually appears in the book? And I don't know, I don't play Baragond. I don't own him. But his profile doesn't seem very good.
No.
So something that could sort of
buff
Baragond.
A Baragond buffing Burgil.
Yeah.
Would be.
And maybe also Pippin.
Yeah, I think he should be able to sort of like, if he's within, like throw buffs to maybe Baragond, Pippin. Probably not Gandalf, but he's all right. But the other 2,
I'd like to see that. Maybe with a new Baragond model, because Baragond's model is also terrible.
It's a bit old, but I think it's a Gary Morley, and it's one of the better ones. So it could be worse.
Next one is Yoras, the healer from the Houses of Healing. Now this is the character that I can't believe is not in the game.
That's true. She actually is one of the glaring omissions.
Because obviously she's not a combatant, but she's got quite a lot of dialogue, I think.
I think she's got one of only 4 women to have dialogue in the entire books.
And she's nice. She's a
5.
really interesting character because she shows you the sort of civilian side of Gondor. And also she's a healer, and we don't have many healing effects in the game. It'd be quite fun, wouldn't it?
And she's the one who says the hands of the king are the hands of the healer.
Yes, famous quote.
Which does help set up Aragorn sneaking back into the city and revealing himself as a king. That's really well done. That's like a really nice touch in Return of the King. That is the Return of the King.
And she's quite funny as well. She's quite comic dialogue.
And he has to tell her to stop running her mouth.
Yeah.
It's got an interesting class dynamic as well, hasn't it? It's kind of like, that's when Aragorn's really starting to be like the big lord. And she's like, ooh, sir, ooh, and he tells her to shut up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely part of Aragorn's transition from relatable ranger to completely aloof lord.
Yeah, really, an interesting character. And I like to see her in the game.
Yeah, some healers in the game are good.
Yeah.
Just a little simple healing character, get some wounds back. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Get her in.
Let's have Yoras, please. The next one, now this is another one that I'm really...
Yeah, this one's massive.
One that I'm surprised we don't have, and I'd really like to see it. It's Gildor of the Havens, who appears at the Council of Elrond. He's a representative of Círdan,
who we do have in the game.
Yeah.
And he knows a lot.
He knows a lot. I suppose he's not a super interesting character, but we've got all the other elf lords who appear in that scene we have in the game.
Yeah.
What I think would be nice about Gildor is he could sort of maybe round out the sort of Grey Havens as a mini sort of sub-faction. If you could like Gildor, maybe the elves in his warband could be upgraded into Mythlond mariners or something.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Just a one extra point on the warriors. I don't know if you'd have armored or unarmored, but give them some different trait. I don't know what they got, far sight of some sort, or maybe they're great archers, or
just really good at sailing boats. So I'm not really sure what building boats.
They can't drown.
Yeah,
that'd be
I'd
good.
like to see that. I mean, it wouldn't be very useful.
Maybe they come with ropes that they can use.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I have an idea. But he's a cool kind of guy that would make Círdan feel a bit more at home, because currently it's Círdan in Rivendell and that's it. There's you can't designate any elves as it, and just giving you the excuse to paint some elves differently to be in that.
I'd really like to see that.
Give us Gildor. So we've got a lot of fiefdoms characters, and that's probably the largest area with named characters and named peoples that they haven't done, and they could absolutely explore. I mean, from a sales perspective, is it going to be that great? Don't know, because there's obviously a lot of Gondor stuff already available. Do they need 8 more units or something? But I'm really into it. You're not into it.
I'm not that into the fiefdoms. I just think there's probably a bit too much of it. And the sections of the book where they most appear are mostly lists. These two appear. I think these just appear in the list of the people who died.
No, they appear in the list of people coming into the city, where Birgil and Pippin are standing out front watching them arrive. That's like one of my favourite bits in the book.
They do die, though, don't they? Don't they also?
A lot of them die. Yeah. But that bit of them all coming into the city, and the idea of the whole land coming into the walled city and to defend it. I love that. That's proper medieval stuff. Historic stuff, and I love the account of it, and so they always capture my imagination. And he in just one line, he gives you enough to kind of be interested in some of them. For me, anyway. Me. So we got.
But these are the ones who they fight Murmak, don't they? Hey, Murmakil.
Dwelin and Durufin.
Yeah.
The sons of Duinhir. Now we have Duinhir in the game.
Yes, and he's got a monster killing ability, hasn't he?
Unfortunately, they made his model look particularly young, so him having 2 adult sons doesn't look great, but we know that they're all a bit Numenorian, aren't they? They live quite long.
Yeah, he could be 50.
50 and still pretty young looking.
Yeah.
So we could have them. I think they do kill Murmak, but then they get trampled.
Yeah.
So we've got Halluin the Fair and the gallant green-clad men of Pinnath Galleon.
Yes.
Again, it just sounds good. That's all you get about them. But they're gallant and fair and stuff. So okay, that's one particular subset of Gondorians. That's a troop type and a leader.
I can't see this happening though because his profile would have to be fair, and all of the new models that they bring out are really badly imbalanced.
Hey. So Anfalas hunters and herdsmen and villagers and their Lord Galazgil and his household. I mean, you don't get a lot there, but hunters and herders, be totally up for that.
Yeah, I'd like some herdsmen. That would be really good.
Yeah, with like pitchforks and
Yeah.
I don't know, cattle prods, cattle grids.
Grid Gwartheg.
Yeah, and bells, cowbells.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't think we'd see the cows in the game, would we?
I've already got cow models.
But anything to say about Lord Galazgil?
Not really. No, Lord Galazgil.
His whole household.
His whole household. So maybe like
We could have another butler.
another butler and maybe another healer
Yeah.
and his kids. And then you've got the men of the Ringlow Vale led by the son of their lord, Devore, on foot. I've never been able to read this sentence properly. Is it... Devore isn't there, right? It's just the son of their lord.
The son, yes.
Who's not named.
Because I don't think that they'd say that he was on foot if he wasn't there.
It's like, but it's always a weird one. People go, yeah, Lord Devore, and it's like, he wasn't there. He sent his son, and his son doesn't even get named. So that's not a very appealing one. Like, son of Devore isn't a very good profile.
No.
Son of Devore on foot, not mounted. While we're on the subject, there should be a horse for Angbor the Fearless, because he very much has a horse in the book. Fisher folk of the Ethir.
Oh, yeah.
Now that, I love them. Just some kind of rabble of guys with fishes on sticks.
Yeah, would they not? I mean, probably be quite a lot like the Lake Town militia.
Yeah.
Survivors of Lake Town.
Or even some Corsairs
people.
or something.
Yeah.
You could just, maybe if you just give us a profile and we can use Corsairs as good guys. Or Lake Town militia. I'll be up for that.
Yeah.
Nets.
Net would be good. Nets and spears.
Yeah.
So that's everything for the Outlands.
Blue Wizards?
Yeah.
You don't want Blue Wizards in the game, do you?
I think I've changed my mind about that. I just suppose what I like about characters like the Blue Wizards, and to a lesser extent, Radagast, I like how mysterious they are. That we know that they must be quite important, but we know really very little about them.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking would be really good for Blue Wizards, actually, named Alatar and Palando, although they have other names as well, don't they? I can't remember what they are. What I think would be quite nice for them is because they're like, we don't know what they're like. Maybe they could be like a good version of a Ringwraith type character where you sort of build your own by adding extra might roll fates.
Yeah.
Because what things like the White Council and hero heavy lists really need is some way to like fill out your extra points. Because I play White Council whenever I am able.
Yeah, but sometimes you're not.
I'm often like 30 points short because you can't build it in a way that maximises your points. So that'd be quite cool.
Yeah, I think that'd be really cool. I also think it'd be cool if they were sort of a bit faction agnostic and they could, because we don't know where they went. They went off to the east and we don't know who they got in with.
Yeah.
If you could run them with different, if you could put them in your Cand, or you could put them in your, I don't know, in your Beornings or whoever. Do you know what I mean? You put them anywhere and be like, oh yeah, this is one of these wizards that.
Well, it would be nice if you could just put Radagast with the Beornings, wouldn't it? But
yeah, that would be nice.
Can't.
And there are two eagles that we haven't had.
Yeah.
Meneldor and Landraval. One of them, Landraval, is the brother of Gwaihir. You don't know.
I don't know. I think they're brothers to each other.
They're
Maybe.
brothers.
Yeah, I mean,
They're like bros.
what is, yeah.
It's very
How
fraternal.
do they, yeah, they probably all just count each other as brothers and sisters as well.
As a person who plays eagles a lot, would you like some named eagles?
Yes. I don't think, obviously the Great Eagles are Great Eagles. So these are just 2 examples of Great Eagles. And I can't see why they would need to be better than all the other Great Eagles in the game. But like with my previous point about the Blue Wizards, it would be good to have something that's a few extra points. Because for Misty Mountains, if you're playing Gwai, you can't then play a list that is around 100.
Yes.
You're always on something 50.
Yeah.
So if you had maybe one that was 120 and one that was 130, you could then build out something that's like...
Yeah, much like the Ents have
600
got
points.
now.
Yeah.
They've got some play with 2 heroes. Speaking of which...
Speaking of Ents, the best named Ent, Skin Bark,
Yeah, that's good.
not in the game.
No, and we haven't had the model for Beachbone. You know what I mean? They did
Yes.
the 2 new named Ents in the Rohan book.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got the model for one, and we didn't get the other. I mean, I would guess it's just not going to be a huge seller and for an expensive model. They may get round to it at some point, but until they do that, it seems unlikely we get a Skinbark profile.
Yeah. And I think the same with the Eagles. I think I don't really need 2 more Eagle models, do you? What you could do with is just like a little kit that can mark them out as different.
Yeah,
So like
if
a
you-
little upgrade.
Yeah, then they
Kit
do
for-
that for, like for instance, now if you get the Radagast Eagle model, it's just you just get Radagast, don't you? You buy the Eagle separately.
Yeah.
Like they could do that, just for, say a different head or you know what I mean.
Well, the heads can't be swapped, but the wings are sort of the way that you tell the Eagles apart.
Yeah.
So it would be good to have a couple of extra wing poses would be quite nice, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe can the Talons be swapped?
The Talons, yeah, they could have something
They
in
could
there
have
to
something
be
in the
holding
Talons.
something.
That would be the way to go.
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome. We think there's basically because they do Rohan so much, they've had so many goes. There's not that a lot left, but there's still 3 semi-prominent Rohan named characters. Galleon, who is the one who sings the like interminably long song about the death of Theoden.
Yes.
Spoilers.
And who didn't, I think, write the other very long song.
I know it's not his fault.
There's only the death of Theoden, there's only one verse included. But then the list of people who died
Yes,
at the
okay,
palace,
that's
that's an unnamed.
That's an unnamed.
Possibly Galleon, but he never wrote another song after he wrote the one about Theoden. So unless he got to write the song about the Mounds of Mundberg, finish that, and then now I'm going to write this one about Theoden, and then that was the last song he ever wrote. That might actually be contradicted.
Why
in
was
the
it the
text
last
of
song
the
he
game.
ever wrote? Because he just completed it.
I think that was,
His heart was broken.
His career's...
But there's no shame in your career fizzling
No,
out. As a
finishing
singer.
on that.
It's a
I
young
don't think
man's
he's really
game.
fizzling out. He's
Going out on a
ending on a
high.
high.
Okay.
The next one is Dunia.
Can't remember much about him.
Well, he's the Lord of Harrowdale, so
Yeah, they
the
run into
marshalling.
him, don't they? He arrives at the weapon take.
Yeah, and that's his land that they are marshalling in. But that's as much as I can remember about him. I think Harrowdale's a really interesting place.
Yeah.
It's described in quite a lot of detail as everything is. But although we've got the entrance to the Path of the Dead in the movies, we do miss a little bit of like what a slightly strange place Harrowdale is, with like the Pukul men. And that's...
And the Woses would be on the way there, right?
The Woses are a bit further
along. Oh yeah, they come after. But yeah, I think he could be a nice, old, portly lord on a horse. Be a good look. I mean, they don't need any more.
We don't need any more Rohan heroes.
But if they have to go back to Rohan at some point because it's a top-selling army, these are your guys.
Yeah.
The least of them probably is Eothane, who Eomer turns to a lot, and Eothane's quite outspoken. I think he's one of the ones who's like, you know, when they meet the 3 hunters, he's a bit like, just kill them, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And don't have any insults off these scum, and that kind of thing. And then I think he mellows, and he's a bit like, actually, you're quite impressive, Aragorn. So Eothane's kind of...
Yeah, he's quite an important character to Eomer.
Yeah, he's like Eomer's the devil on his shoulder.
Yeah.
and Gandalf and Aragorn attempt to be the angel.
But again, I mean, I don't know what they do with those characters and how you have another different profile for Rohan Heroes. But it'd be nice to see them. And then an honourable mention to Guthlaf, who is a child in the film. In the book, he's Theoden's banner bearer, so he's been kind of replaced by Gamling. So an honourable mention in that we can't imagine that he could actually be in the game because we've already got a Rohan banner bearer. And the other thing he does is he gives Theoden his horn, which Theoden immediately breaks by blowing into it.
We've all got friends like that, you know. You go, oh, can I borrow your thing? And then they break it immediately.
And we've already got a Rohan horn guy as well, in the form of Erkenbrand. So.
Yeah. Although if they did make a Guthlaf model and he did have a horn, it's a single-use horn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like once per game you can sound the horn of Guthlaf.
He can use it. It counts as a war horn. But then if Theoden is in range, he can do something mega with it.
But then
he can't use it again.
So there's quite a lot to work with there, rules guys. Maybe he's the best.
Yes. Now, well, staying with the Rohan-y sort of theme, but moving somewhat into Gondor. This is another character that I'm really surprised we don't have, because he's quite. I mean, he doesn't see combat. Well, on screen. Hergon.
Oh yeah, Hergon, the errand rider of Minas Tirith.
Yeah, he brings the red arrow.
Yeah.
To Theoden. He's kind of replaced by the beacons in the film, because the beacons are there to signal that Gondor is at war, not specifically a way of
telling Rohan to come.
Calling Rohan to their aid. That's actually the red arrow, which Hergon brings to Theoden as a message from Denethor. And he's quite a cool guy. I think a sort of a named Gondor scout.
Yeah, and he's gone like full gas all the way from Minas Tirith to bring this arrow. Is it in a box? I think it's in a box.
It might well be.
I feel like it's in a presentation box, like it's a very special
I don't think the model would have that, though. He'd probably be holding it, wouldn't he?
He'd probably be holding it aloft, like that, on his horse, and the horse would be looking knackered.
I really want to make a conversion of this and just call him a Gondor captain.
Yeah, if you make a conversion, then they'll definitely make an official model
about a month
after.
That's how we make it happen.
So, yeah.
And then, he dies. We see his company dead later on. So he'd probably not have
on the
any
Pelennor?
fate points. On the way back, I think it's after they come out.
He rides back to say that they have accepted it.
Yes, which is why Denethor loses hope, because the message that...
Hergon never gets back.
Yeah, Hergon never gets back.
And then they pass him dead near the Ramas or something.
Or the remains of where they think, of what they think is Hergon and his mates.
So from The Hobbit, there's not that many, because not many people are named in The Hobbit for a start, but...
And they've put... the films just have got everything.
Yeah, the fact they made
plus,
3 films out of one kid's book.
So they've really wrung all of the details out of it.
But they didn't have talking raven Rorak.
No. I suppose that's because there's already enough nonsense in that film when you start introducing talking birds.
Yes, they do have these.
They probably thought that wasn't believable.
Yeah.
They thought, I think we can do running up, falling masonry,
but not a talking
bird. We can't do a raven.
They have the bird that taps on the secret door.
Yeah, also not a profile.
Yeah, that's not a profile. It's also a very small bird as well, but I think Rorak could be quite big, and he plays a quite significant role in the books.
Yeah, and it would be nice to give dwarf armies a little bit of variation, because they are very uniform. It would be cool to have like a little bird.
Yeah.
That could...
I've got the bird, the raven from Cursed City, as an objective marker for my dwarves. So I'm ready to go. If you do a Rorak profile, I don't need to wait months for the model to come out, like with the Crabane.
Maybe it could be like an objective holder or something.
Yeah,
be good.
I mean, the other one from The Hobbit that they are named and they're in the film is the Wereworms.
Yeah, so they're huge in the film. Not as in they've got a huge important role, but they're just very big worms.
Graboids. But they're used just for tunnelling, aren't they? They don't actually attack in the films. They just tunnel up, withdraw, and then orcs can come out.
Which is interesting, because if they did just carry on, they'd probably win the battle much easier, wouldn't they?
Yes. Also,
But
when
maybe
you think
that was
about it,
not-
reversing in tunnels is tricky. They must have had to have had a side tunnel that they dug earlier that they could then reverse into, so that the orcs could come
Because
behind
the orcs
them.
come out almost immediately, don't they?
Yeah. So I think they must have cleverly built a side tunnel.
Which they had done just before they left the end bit.
Yeah. The logistics of it are tricky. I don't want them in the game. I think
don't want
they'd
them in
be
the game.
daft. I guess they'd work a bit like the termite assault drill in a Horror Heresy. You know,
Right, I don't
be
know.
just like a pop up on the board, and you can have a squad of orcs come out. A warband of orcs can come out of a hole in the ground.
Yes.
That's all they do. Or you could go for a book version, but I don't think there's a possibility of going for a book version of something that is in the films.
Exactly. Like Guthlaf. You've already got him replaced with gambling, so you're not going to have
Yeah,
Guthlaf.
and you're not going to go, oh, we've got some wereworms, they're really small and they can actually go into combat, because you've got a film version, you just would go
Yeah.
with that. And so I think they're just a
And they, I
non-starter.
think, would be... They're supposed to be way out in the east, aren't they? So I think they'd be Easterling.
Easterling wereworms.
Yeah.
Can we have Candish wereworms, please?
Sure. Whatever you like.
Now, these aren't so, glamorous because it's not a named profile, but I think there were 3 human men profiles that you could have in the game. They don't necessarily need 3 new kits to do them, but Woodmen and Men of Isengard are both kind of named factions in a way. I mean, Saruman clearly has men in Isengard who are in his service. They aren't crazy barbarians like the Dunlendings,
Yeah.
and they aren't Uruk-hai.
Yeah, they're descendants of the Gondorian garrison who kind of went a bit native and have interbred with the Dunlendings. But they live in Isengard, which is quite a civilized place before it turns into a factory. So, Saruman's household and guards, I can imagine being quite a cool extra little profile. For,
A kind of nasty but civilized looking
Yeah.
man. But I mean, even in the films, that when Gandalf goes to visit Isengard at the beginning, they must have gardeners, quite a lot of gardeners, because it's very nicely landscaped.
It's definitely a inhabited settlement.
And they live in the walls. Most of the accommodation is in the walls, the big encircling wall. I think they'd be cool to have, and just a little something to add into Isengard, and you could do it totally book and make them quite elite.
Yeah. I like the idea of like early career Saruman, where he has already started looking for the ring. He's already corrupted, but before he's gone, massive orc army.
Yep. And then you've got Woodmen, or Woodsmen, I never remember which one he uses.
Woodmen.
Woodmen, who are mentioned in The Hobbit
Yep.
as living in the wooded areas all around the Misty Mountains, really, right, on either side.
Yeah,
and
but they
above.
have a town
They have
called
a town.
Woodman Town, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think they're still mentioned in The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they're not an organised peoples in the Rohan or Gondor way, but they are men have lived in the woods, and they're descended from this and that people, but they're kind of keeping a watch on the goblins and that kind of thing.
And they could go in Radagast's alliance, and that's the most important
Yep, they
thing.
could go in Radagast Alliance, and I think they could go with the Bjornings, but be less impressive, super ubermensch guys, and just be like a rabble of woodmen.
They feature there sort of is a profile for them in the Fall of the Necromancer, or is it the Rise of the Necromancer? The Necromancer book.
The Necromancer book.
They
has them.
feature in one of the scenarios where you use a Rohan warrior model and profile for them. But I'd like to see them get a little bit more love than that.
And that leads us to the third one, which is my pet want always, which is a militia kit. And you could use that arguably for all of these. I mean, maybe the Isengard men would want some better weapon options and armor and stuff, but to be able to represent the militia, the people of Middle-earth rising up to defend themselves, or to go to war from Bree, from these Woodmen, the Rohan civilians, which make up a big force of Rohan's armies, Gondorians, the fisher folk of the Ether, you know what I mean, the Amphalas herdsmen. It could be all these guys. You could add to your Lake Town militia. You could represent people who've fallen in with Sauron, much like we have in the Rings of Power. You know what I mean? You could represent people from Harad, Easterlings, you know, from Rune, anywhere.
Umbar.
Pretty much Umbar, could have.
Because I think I think that's a bit of a limitation of the Corsairs. Is that I know the faction's called Corsairs, but I'd like to see something other than just pirates.
Pirates, yeah. And I think all of these lands have civilian populations, and in a war like that, they're all rising up and taking arms, and we don't see that much in the films, and you don't see it a lot in the books, but it's apparent that that's going on. If you read the accounts of sort of the post War of the Ring accounts in the book of what happened, you know, Bree, Chetwood, and Archet were all attacked. They all rose up and defended themselves, hobbits and men, and a couple of dwarves. And I would so love to be able to do that in game, and like a multi-part kit that allowed you to just build a ton of really low point, you know, really low points.
Yeah, like
4 points. You know, as good as a goblin. You know, I think that's the level that you want them at. Not even as good as a good hobbit. You know, like it would be so good, and it would. With one kit, you could add it to a ton of factions, and people would just get some to have just a little cheap bunch. You know, maybe you might want to put a limit on them so you don't get too much spam or whatever. You say, oh, this army can only take 33% militia or whatever, because you know they're unruly. They need a lot of marshalling. But
and I think it would be very cool for scenarios. Obviously, none of the scenarios have them in, except with the exception of things like that, the Woodman in the Necromancer scenario. But
you could absolutely have Bernie of the Westfold scenarios with them, and you know,
exactly.
defend
I'd
themselves.
really like to see some more sort of scenario-based play with civilians. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I love it. Be crazy about it.
Yeah, so that's like, if you had to choose one of these things that we've talked about to actually have in the game.
It's the human militia for me. Yeah. And for you?
Well, that was a very convincing argument. But it's hard to say. I think I'd really like to see Yoras, but I think realistically that's quite impossible.
No, we've got to have Yoras.
I just don't think they'd ever do Yoras.
Because they've got to go back to Gondor again at some point, I think, because it's like the
and Gondor at War was a Rohan supplement, wasn't it?
Gondor at War is just Rohan, Legendary Legions. So there's still room. I think that with the fact that there's still room to explore in the fiefdoms, and Baragon could do with a new model, and the Citadel Guard and Fountain Court, they're nice models, but they're very much metal or Finecast, and it's...
Oh, and also the fact that Prince Imrahil looks a lot worse now than the really good Swan Knights.
Yes.
So Swan Knights look ace.
Yes.
And then Imrahil looks a bit odd next to them, so he could do with an update, couldn't he?
Yeah, and that could be a really nice Forge World model if you along the lines of Glorfindel or something.
Yeah.
You know, a really top foot and mounted model. So, you know, I don't think Europe's impossible.
I think I'd most like to see, just because it would make my life easier for playing Radagast's Alliance and the Misty Mountains, I think I'd like to see Meneldor and Landreval, just to give you some extra points to play with there.
And it's, like you say, it's kind of profiles, not necessarily models if they can't do it, but, you know, profiles. People are still running Beachbone even though we've never had a model, you know?
Yeah.
I've played Beachbone, you know, it's...
And people are using those, the Runish Drakes.
Yes.
Seeing quite a lot of them.
Yep. Those are all ones we'd like to see, and with things sort of, feels like things in the Middle-earth team are sort of winding back up. We might see something new, it feels like.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of not a completely pointless thing to talk about. They're hiring new sculptors, and, you know, I guess licensing things have been resolved a bit. That's the impression I get. But here's 5 profiles we probably don't need. Number 1, I've got Uftac, And the quote about him is, do you remember old Uftac? We lost him for days. Then we found him in a corner, hanging up he was. But he was wide awake and glaring. How we laughed. She'd forgotten him, maybe, but we didn't touch him. No good interfering with her. He's a not quite dead, probably dead, Uruk-hai or orc that Shelob had taken away.
Yeah, he'd make a nice objective.
He'd make a nice objective. Probably don't need him. But he does illustrate that they don't care much about their fellow orcs and Uruk-hai.
Yeah. I don't know why we've put this in the list of characters we don't really need. The Thinking Fox, I think, could be an excellent addition to Radagast's Alliance. Games Workshop, if you're listening. A fox passing through the wood on business of his own stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought. Well, what next? I have heard of strange doings in this land, but I have seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this. He was quite right, but he never found out any more about it. I think that really gives you an insight into the world of the animals of Middle-earth, and that they're all sentient beings.
It's such a random bit of the book.
Yeah, it's interesting how at the start of the book, Tolkien has got very much more of a sort of narrative style.
Yeah.
In that, the thing that always stands out to me is the fact that he describes one of the fireworks as being like an express train, which is so strange to have. Like when you look at the rest of the trilogy, to have a simile that appeals to something from the modern world. Yeah. Rather than in universe.
So strictly speaking, we could have an express train profile.
Because it is mentioned, and I love trains.
Yeah, I don't want that in the game.
You don't want the fox?
The fox. I mean, he never finds out anything again, so you wouldn't be able to field him against any hobbits or anything that would tell him any of the story.
While we're on the topic of the Thinking Fox and things that should be in Radagast's Alliance, I strongly believe that Crebain or something identical to Crebain should be in Radagast's Alliance, because Saruman is very disdainful of using birds and talking to birds. Yeah. And under Gandalf's instruction, Radagast sends birds to tell Saruman and Gandalf everything he knows. Yeah. So if there are birds spying for Saruman, probably Radagast's birds, really.
Yeah. Maybe a moth as well. Hard to paint.
Yeah. I go with moth. Yeah. I mean, the moth essentially replaces Radagast in the...
It's true.
In the original trilogy.
Yes. One we definitely don't need is Targon of the Minas Tirith Batteries. Yeah. Pippin tries to get some food, and he gets Bergil to help him, and it says, they went to the Minas Tirith Batteries, and they got their bread and butter and cheese and apples, the last of the winter store, wrinkled but sound and sweet, and a leather flagon of new-drawn ale, and wooden platters and cups. They put all into a wicker basket and climbed back into the sun, and Beregorn brought Pippin to a place at the east end of the great outthrust battlement, where there was an embrasure in the walls with a stone seat beneath the sill. From there they could look out on the morning over the world. They ate and drank, and they talked now of Gondor and its ways and customs, now of the Shire and the strange countries that Pippin had seen. Again, it's one of those like completely irrelevant little bits of whimsy that happens rarely in the Return of the King. But that's one. Yeah. The Minas Tirith Batteries and Targon, who gets them some food.
Don't need it. Fully rounded.
Don't need it.
So we've got Fatty Lumpkin, who is Tom Bombadil's pony.
Fat pony.
He's mine, said Tom. My 4-legged friend, though I seldom ride him, and he wanders off and far, free under the hillsides. When your ponies strayed from me, they got to know my Lumpkin, and they smelt him in the night, and quickly ran to meet him. I thought he'd look for them, and with his words of wisdom take all their fear away. But now my jolly Lumpkin, old Tom's going to ride. Hey, he's coming with you, just to set you on the road, so he needs a pony, for you cannot easily talk to hobbits that are riding, when you're on your own legs, trying to trot beside them. So some things are difficult for Tom Bombadil. Even though he can't do everything without thinking. One is talking to hobbits and walking at the same time.
Yeah, and shutting up.
Yeah.
But you could have quite a good profile for a fatty lumpkin, right? But you could have a feature where, you know, at the beginning of a turn, you know, you roll a d6 on a 5 or a 6. He brings back mounts that have been dismounted in game, and you get your horse back.
Yeah, I like that.
That's pretty good. You know, you could do a new Tom Bombadil model, foot and mounted, which I'm sure is what Forge World are just waiting to sculpt.
And maybe ponies will be able to charge.
What with fatty lumpkins around?
If fatty lumpkins within 6 inches. This needs to go in the main list.
It needs to go in the main list. The last one we don't need is Sancho Proudfoot. Now, when they're clearing out Bag End to leave, it says, then they went round the hole and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 boffins and a bolger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also had a tussle with young Sancho Proudfoot, old Odo Proudfoot's grandson, who had begun an excavation in the larger pantry where he thought there was an echo. The legends of Bilbo's gold excited both curiosity and hope, for legendary gold, mysteriously obtained, if not positively ill-gotten, is, as everyone knows, anyone's for the finding, unless the search is interrupted. So he's probably the cheekiest hobbit, Sancho Proudfoot, and he's got an amazing name, Sancho Proudfoot.
It's interesting that I don't know what the linguistic origins of Sancho are, but I assume it's Spanish.
Yeah, you think of like Sancho Panza. Yeah, it's
So it's interesting that Tolkien chose that name.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Sancho Proudfoot. He's unlucky to have not had a profile in the Scouring of the Shire book
Because they did everything else.
We did have some quite. Robin Smallborough is a minor character. Sancho Proudfoot. I think the fact that he doesn't feature again in the Scouring chapter of the book is let him down there. But he's definitely a hobbit with a lot of character. So those are our profiles that we want or don't want.
I want all of them now.
Yeah, we've convinced ourselves. We've made the case for them all. And I hope we get to see some of them.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of things that need redoing here and there, and, you know, let's have a new plastic Boromir and that kind of thing.
Let's have a new Galadriel.
We've got loads of Galadriels.
Yeah, but we need a plastic Galadriel. And, I mean, look at the work they've done with, like, Glorfindel and Elrond. A new Galadriel would be beautiful. And a new Celeborn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Frodo and Sam, please.
Frodo and Sam in plastic and Gollum and Shelob. That's the set we need next.
Yeah.
Put a comment with what profiles we could add that we didn't think of. I'm sure there's lots, actually. I haven't read The Hobbit hard enough recently. When I read Lord of the Rings, I'm like, there's a person I haven't thought about before. I haven't done that with The Hobbit. Like and subscribe and all that jazz.
It makes no difference to me if you do
that. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you for having me.
Better at the lore than me. And
I'm not sure about that. I didn't know about the Butteries guy.
The Butteries, Targon, legend. Buttery. See you next time. Bye.